All right. I think we're live. So, um, I'm just gonna get started. Welcome back to my house. Another edition of uh, Kimberly Little Chute Public Library Cribs. Um, Still don't have a fish tank. Still in my basement, making art like a hermit. All good though. I'm just gonna delve in a little deeper today. Today I'm just gonna talk a little bit about how art saved my life. Um, how it kind of brought me to the space that I am in now, and then get more specific into one of the different media I like, which would be printmaking. Um, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit. So over here, that's my press. That's one of the many forms of printmaking I really enjoy, which is relief print. What I like to use is wood blocks, like this. Um, but you can also use linoleum like this. Um, and so it kind of I guess I'll get at that a little bit more in why I like one way or the other. But um, yeah, so I guess to start, um, when I went to college, I kind of touched on it before. I wasn't the most confident in terms of being an artist, being artistic, um, being myself. I didn't really know what to do, and I kind of had this like set image on what art was, which was photorealism, beautiful landscapes, um, still lifes, portraiture. You know, kind of framed up from when I was in school, in like high school. Of course, there was graffiti and cartoons and comics and that sort of thing, which is an art form in and of itself. But I didn't know if that was necessarily as serious as the other. And so, while I was going through college, I was still kind of a knucklehead, still kind of a kid, um, and I ended up, kind of making mistakes along the way, as many people do. But my mistakes um, tended to have heavier consequences, and so um, 2 years into college, I found myself kicked out, which wasn't really the greatest thing at the time. And so I'm going to bring you back here. These are some prints that I made for my senior show, and they're about my life. Um, so let me just hopefully I don't lose you guys here. Um, all right, so these are some life-size prints that I made, and I'll just kind of I carved all of this out of wood. Yep, and this is a picture of me holding a baby, which at that point in time was my son, who I had in college after the trouble, of course. And as one thing you might have been able to see from there um, is the wood grain in it. I purposely, and obviously it's a 4x8 block, so the wood grain has to run away, but I wanted the wood grain to run with the vertical of the prints. But at that point in my life, you know, um, I wasn't necessarily finding the most success with school, but I also wasn't taking school seriously, and I got myself in some serious trouble, like I said. And then when I got back into school, shortly after that, I also found out I was having my son, and so that really turned a page for me in my book. Um, I started taking school more seriously, and I started really exploring art and everything that it could be. Um, I did do the graffiti and continue to draw characters and stuff like that, but I also tried to like figure out what it meant to be a fine artist and could the two interact together, or was there no room for that? Um, and then also trying to link up with like-minded people, trying to do those things. And so eventually that found its way into printmaking. Like I said, printmaking is out of a wood block, and I'm just gonna kind of show you my prints that I've made since I was a, a kid, and a kid as in like a young college kid trying to figure out what printmaking was. And at the time, I just really wanted to like push the boundaries. So there is something called a reduction where you build color, you print, and then you carve away those colors. And so one of the first ever like multiple colored prints that I made, which I just dug out for this, and I laughed to myself. And I couldn't. This might maybe even was my neatest one, and I feel embarrassed to show you guys, but yeah. So it was like this crazy, right? And I was trying to figure out like, could I combine fine art, like printmaking, this classical, ancient technique of using a matrix and transferring ink onto paper, and then combining it with like this culture that I also really enjoyed, which was like graffiti and the vibrant colors and kind of like those weird characters. And I think at the time I was pretty excited about this because I did the most colors in my class, and um, yeah, I didn't really, I don't know. I guess now looking at it, maybe not so much. And then I also was trying to figure out like some cultural things, and so I have a sugar skull like mixed with something else. I'm not really even sure, but it's like one of my first prints that I did. Um, and it all like revolves around like trying to figure out what fine art is and if I fit or not. And then I did try my hand. This is like actually one of my favorite prints that I've ever made. It's just a little guy, just off a little drawing study I did over at um, the Lake Michigan, the lighthouse there in Sheboygan, which is where I'm from. And so it grew, and then probably besides my prints back here that you see, my favorite print I ever did was this one I busted out for this print exchange. So in printmaking, you have a matrix, right? So you have something like this that I carved out, and then you print it onto paper, and then it produces. Here, we'll use this instead. So I got the block here that I carved out, inked up, transferred onto paper, and then usually this one was, it's hard to tell on the computer, but it was too light, so I didn't sign it or edition it. And what an edition is usually I try to shoot for 10 perfect or as close to perfect prints. And along the way, you do what's called proofing. So you make little prints on this. It's called newsprint. It's crummy paper, right? It's super not very archival. It fades really fast. But so this one, you see this eye here. Oops, it's the wrong way. This eye here, it's super light, and so that was not a perfect print. So I was working on, okay, what do I need to change? Or over here, it's hard to see, but there's some marks right here. And they might be just little things, but when you're printing on a nice piece of paper, those little things can stand out. And so you look for stuff like that. Here's one. Maybe it looks like that was taken before that. So you see those marks even more prevalent there. And then you carve them out. You carve away at them so that way they don't show up in your next print when you're trying to make an addition. And so I just kind of fell in love with that. I just, there was something really therapeutic about it, I guess, and really easy for me. And so I began to like look up people that might influence me. And if you have any questions, this time I'm trying to stay conscious of them. So if you have any, please ask, so I won't bounce back again, 10 minutes later or whatever, and try to answer them. But two people that really, really influenced me, whose work I love, and I might butcher their names, but first being this guy, this artist. His name's Egon Schiele, and I just really loved like his just like elongated figure and just kind of like this dark, if you will, sense to it, which kind of also you can see here. The top one would be Kathy Kolwitz, um, who's an amazing printer, and I just really loved like the dark tones and the line quality, and just kind of like this harshness about it. And so that when I was in college, they really influenced the things I was doing, on in terms of drawing, and even after college, just now the way that I handle figure when I'm doing any type of printmaking, I try to incorporate like some of that line work that you might have seen. So here's another print I did. This was the first print edition that I ran off of my press back here. But if you see, I mean, it's kind of abstracted, but like this here, where is it? Oh, on this side, um, has like fingers and like a hand figure and like almost like a jaw. And I exaggerated it and stretched the lines and all that. And so that's part of, excuse me, I'm just gonna bring you guys over to my work here. Um, Part of what I'm doing when I'm creating, and so like I showed you those blocks or those prints, but here's the actual wood block. And so I really tried to catch some of that line work, I guess. That the darkish, the harshness, I guess, is kind of how I described it. I think it just kind of fit my style when I was in school, and then also like what I was trying to capture. Sorry, just putting you guys down here. Um, but yeah, so I'm gonna, I guess, talk a little bit about how I created those prints. But those were probably my two greatest influences when it came to printmaking specifically. I mean, I can list my influences for um, my artistic, kind of thought process forever. I also really enjoyed a photographer by the name of why is Esteban Oriol, who actually just created a documentary on Netflix called LA Originals. Check it out if you haven't. Um, but he does like this gritty film photography, street photography of LA, Skid Row, that sort of thing. And I really enjoy like that concept of art and printmaking and film photography, in my opinion, because you're using something to create prints, is also a form of printmaking, as is screen printing, lithography, intaglio, um, which are different forms. I'll concentrate before I get too tangenty. Um, but I'm just gonna talk a little bit about kind of how I went about making those, and the tools I use, and then kind of where I'm headed. And so I showed you my block, and I'll go back with it so you can see the scale relationship between some of the tools. I'm just gonna grab them off my press. All right. So as I said, I really enjoy using wood because I really love the wood grain and um, the way that it can lend itself to your print. I think in the one directly behind me with the black shirt, the wood grain really helped with the vertical nature of the piece itself. Um, and the tools I use, let me see. Okay, so for wood, and I'm going to demo these tools all on linoleum just because it's going to be easier for you guys to see, hopefully, fingers crossed. Um, but these are the tools that I use. These are called gouges. I don't know if that really shows you. And they come in different sizes, different shapes. Here's like almost like a knife that I use to cut straight edges and then carve away up to that point so I don't cut into my piece. This is a V. Kind of capture it there. And so that first one I showed you was like a bigger, one of my bigger ones. Not my biggest, right? And then I have the next, trying to show you guys. Yeah, there's that. And then this is my baby. This is weirdly enough the one I used the most. This is the smallest one I got. It's like incredibly hard to see. Um, but yeah, I'll show you kind of the marks I make. So I'm going to use this linoleum block. I covered this. So here's a cut. Oh, sorry, this side. This is a cut I made before. It's kind of still difficult to see. So on this side here, I'm going to cut into the black. I just scribbled on some Sharpie just so you guys could kind of see the marks that they make and the depth, that sort of thing. So I'll just start with the bigger one here. And really, I really just use this to clear large spaces. So if we're like, actually, let me just get at one of my blocks. Um, so yeah, I guess real quick before I get in here, how long did that take to make? So if you're referencing the pieces behind me, that was my last semester of college. So instead of just using all my work that I've built throughout college, I started from scratch. I built a whole show. I had, I think, also one photograph in there. Um, but it took, I don't know, what is college semester, 3.5-ish months. Um, and I spent a lot of time carving out of these blocks with these little tiny tools. Which was, it was cool. It was fun. It was tiring. I had pretty much exhausted my finger strength by the end, but it was actually a really rewarding process. Just because I feel like my show came out pretty good. I really was excited about those blocks. On my website, you could see all 4 of the blocks, and the series is about my journey up until that point, which was, high school kid, kind of a knucklehead, making mistakes, which you see this one behind me, um, and kind of the trouble that it landed me in, and then having a son, which turned my life around, and then kind of looking forward would be my last piece. And now, I mean, I feel like I've, kind of done a crazy amount of an array of different things, not just printmaking. I'm also painting murals and things like that. Um, but yeah, it took a long time, I guess, to sum it all up. Uh, they were um, a chore, and it took me not even a long time to just carve them, but just to draw them. You know, like I said before, I really enjoy Egon Schiele and Kathy Kollwitz, and one thing I really loved about Egon Schiele is he like exaggerates the human figure, and I was trying to figure out how to kind of do that a little bit with what I'm doing, and then also add that kind of the rich white and black difference, and kind of the exaggeration of line in terms of defining the human figure. Um, and so drawing them took a long time. I had a lot of help from my classmate at the time, who's now my wife. Um, she is an amazing figure drawer, and she really actually helped me. Especially, I have one print it's not up here, where I'm crouching. It took me forever, and she helped. And really, to touch more on that therapeutic type of meditation part of it. So once it gets drawn on there, once I don't have to do much more thinking. I just take my gouges and I just carve all the areas away that aren't black, that aren't color, that aren't drawn. And so it becomes really, I don't want to say mindless, but it just really meditational. Like I'm really able to remove myself from it while also creating the work. Um, so kind of back to getting at um, some of the more recent stuff. So I got commissioned to do 3 prints for Black History Month last year. Um, and how that worked is I did this one here of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And then specifically talking about how I use my gouges to carve them. So I use this big one. This one I use to carve away like all this empty space. So you can kind of see those deeper, wider lines here from this. And I also tried to be conscious of, if I'm using this, okay, go with how, like, you wouldn't see vertical clouds per se. They, you think of them as horizontal. So if in case, like under here, you kind of see, like, if in case it transfers, some ink gets on that, then they might look like cloud figures. So I try to be conscious of that when carving. And here, you see how these, so the road's running this way, so then I tried to carve vertically on it into the horizon. All things to be conscious of. And then, like even smaller, oh, this wrong side, sorry, I'm getting used to working backwards. I use my real tiny guy right here. And this, like I said, I love this one. And I'll just kind of show you again on this linoleum, because wood will be just kind of more difficult how it shows up. So I'll use my small guy first. I'll just make 3 lines. And I'll show you them versus, so this is my big guy that I use to carve out bigger spaces. And so there's quite a difference. I'm going to quickly bring you guys back. I just want to show you something really quick. So most of this area, oh, really a lot of it, especially in here, the whole face, I used this little guy. So I was just wanting to show you so you can get kind of an idea of kind of that weird methodical artist brain. Just kind of carving away with this little tiny gouge at a giant print. I really do enjoy it, but it is kind of taxing when it's such a big project. So, but I'm gonna go ahead and kind of demo how this works. And this is the knife. So what I do is I use this to make a hard edge. And so I'll cut a line, I guess, and I'll use the gouge, and I go right up to the line. And it tends to work a lot better on wood. So, like those, not the bottom one, but those 3 right there, how that hard line is. So that's what I use the knife part for. Yeah, and I just kind of, pick away at that all day. So this print that I'm going to be doing for the library, right here, is specifically related to being in quarantine. It's about just being isolated. It's like this weird dark lake, and these hills in the background, and I'm thinking I'm going to add some type of dark cloud type figures. I don't know. I just want it to kind of be reflective of this time in isolation or quarantine or whatever weird space that we've been in. But these little dots are going to be all carved around with this, and so it's really difficult to like see what it will be until we start proofing, and that'll be next week. So next week, what I'm going to do is I'll have this all cut, and then we're going to print it right here. I'll do like a little print demo, real quick, just to show you. So I have these tools. I have a few different ones, but they're called brayers, and you just throw some ink on them, and then essentially roll it up with ink, roll up your block. You can do a few different ways of transfer that ink. Use a spoon. You can throw it through the press. You can use your hand. Yeah, but that's where I think I'm gonna leave things is this is the block that I'll be doing next week. Talking about, well, I guess it's not talking, but reflecting my experience and my thoughts around isolation and this quarantine thing, which may or may not be coming to an end. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm pretty excited about it, and I'm glad to be making prints. I love making prints. I wish I got to do it more often, especially since I have my own press, which is hard to come by. Thank you again for joining me in my studio. Maybe next time at in my crib I'll have a fish tank. Maybe not. All right. Well, I hope you guys all have a great night. Great weekend. It was beautiful out. Avoid the rain tomorrow. Stay dry. All right, friends. Bye.